Gaming has come a long way from the heydays of the arcade where you could continually drop quarters into slot machines and compete for high scores with your friends. Modern games have evolved into the ultimate amalgamation of art and technology and rake in more revenue than most other forms of entertainment. While many of the beloved franchises of the past have been lost to the changing times, some IPs have managed to stay relevant for generations upon generations. This feature is dedicated to celebrating such franchises and showcasing 15 of the biggest graphical leaps in gaming. Deus Ex to Mankind Divided. Deus Ex was a revolutionary game when it was originally released back in 2000. Its complex web of mechanics and interesting narrative themes paved the way for systemic game design for years to come. And a lot of that still stands true for Mankind Divided, which is the latest entry in this long-running franchise. Of course, there's a night and day difference between the visual fidelity of both games, and a simple side-by-side comparison is all that's needed to see the graphical leap in all of its glory. Mankind Divided has amazing weather effects, superb lighting and reflections, and lifelike animations, while the original feels clunky and borderline unplayable by modern standards. Gran Turismo to Gran Turismo 7. Polyphony Digital has carved out a legacy for itself with the Gran Turismo series, a racing simulator series that has continued to serve as a showcase title for PlayStation consoles ever since its humble beginnings. The original Gran Turismo was released in 1997 for the PlayStation 1 and instantly wowed gamers with its impressive rendition of cars and a driving model that felt unlike anything else on the market. More than 2 decades later, Gran Turismo 7's impeccable visual fidelity completely dwarfs that of the original. Car models in Gran Turismo 7 have exponentially higher poly counts, and each part of that vehicle has been recreated with painstaking attention to detail. Similarly, the driving model underpinning it all is also a lot more complex than before. And everything from track temperature to tire grips and engine tuning significantly changes the driving experience. All in all, Gran Turismo 7's scope completely dwarfs that of the original, and this comparison is a testament to how far the series has come within 4 generations. Hitman Codename 47 to Hitman 3. Hitman Codename 47 was developer IO Interactive's bold attempt at crafting a stealth sandbox. And while those efforts were certainly commendable, the game suffered from some amount of jank in animations and low-resolution textures, among other things. Over the course of just 2 decades, and more than a handful of entries, the franchise has morphed into a household name in gaming. Hitman 3 is the latest in the series, and unlike the original, it stands tall as one of the best games on the market. Gone are the days of janky animations and pixelated textures, which have been replaced by smooth player animations and pristine-looking environments that exude a sense of grandeur that's unlike anything on the market. Grand Theft Auto to GTA 5. Grand Theft Auto is easily one of the most influential games on the market, and the original was a top-down game about car chases and robberies that was released on the original PlayStation. The franchise has retained its status as a cultural behemoth with each passing release, and the same trend of outperforming its predecessors continues over in the graphics department as well. Grand Theft Auto 5 features a wonderful representation of Los Santos and its surrounding areas, which are considerably distinct, yet manage to effortlessly flow into one another like a real living space. It still looks impressive after all these years, but we're definitely excited to see how Grand Theft Auto 6 improves on these foundations whenever it releases in the near future. The Elder Scrolls Arena to Skyrim. The original Elder Scrolls was an ambitious RPG, but those ambitions were heavily limited by the technology of the time. Released back in 1994, the Elder Scrolls Arena featured 2D character sprites, painfully low draw distances, and basic RPG gameplay, which was revolutionary at the time but remains unplayable by modern standards. Jump to 20 years later, we have the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, which is not only a vast game brimming with oodles of content, but also a beautiful game that doesn't compromise on the micro-fidelity to render such a huge world. Sure, it looks a bit dated since it has been well over a decade since it was originally released, but the jump in visual quality between the 2 games is nothing to scoff at either. Need for Speed to Unbound. Much like Gran Turismo that we discussed earlier, the original Need for Speed was an arcade racer that has carved a legacy for itself in the span of a couple of decades and more than a dozen entries in its lifetime. Naturally, the franchise has evolved considerably since its inception, and a brief comparison between the latest entry, Need for Speed Unbound, and the original is all that's needed to decipher how far the series has come from those humble beginnings. Linear racetracks have been replaced by sprawling cityscapes, and cars have exceptionally higher poly counts and detailing than before. Unbound does sacrifice the raw visuals for its art style, but the graphical leap is huge nevertheless. Max Payne to Max Payne 3. The original Max Payne might not have been the most revolutionary game of its time, but it certainly had a level of polish and personality to it that made it stand out from the shooters of the time. It looked good visually, but nothing extraordinary. Part of that can be blamed on original developer Remedy's relatively low development budgets, because when Max Payne 3 got the budget and resources it needed, it turned out to be an absolute treat. Despite it being almost a decade old at this point, Max Payne 3 still holds up surprisingly well today, with its sharp visuals and gameplay that never fails to hit the mark. Just a side-by-side comparison of the two games is all that's needed to see the massive difference between the visual quality of these titles. Half-Life to Half-Life Alyx. Despite its years-long hiatus from game development, Valve is one of the biggest names in the business, and a lot of that credit goes to the excellent work on the Half-Life franchise. The original game was a revolutionary hit, and it was one of the best-looking and best-playing games on the market. Half-Life Alyx retains a similar status, and it outshines its predecessors by extending that level of fidelity into a brand new dimension with its VR nature. And of course, you get even better physics interactions that have also seen major improvements since the original. Spider-Man 1982 to Marvel's Spider-Man 2 2023. While Spider-Man 1982 and Spider-Man 2 2023 don't have the same developers, they certainly make for some interesting comparisons. Spider-Man 1982 was a very primitive attempt at capturing the feeling of being the friendly neighborhood webhead, and this Atari 2600 project involves trying to make your way to the top of a building by shooting webs while avoiding the many traps that lie in your path. Jump to Spider-Man 2, and it's a game that well and truly makes you feel like Spider-Man. And the best part is, you can switch between Miles Morales and Peter Parker anytime you wish, which adds a ton of variety to the experience as well. Visually, the difference is exponential, to say the least, and it stands as a testament to how technology helps developers achieve any power fantasy they wish to. FIFA International Soccer 1993 to FIFA 23. Developed by Electronic Arts, FIFA International Soccer 1993 was a revolutionary title that would go on to usher in a new era for soccer games over the next 3 decades. FIFA International Soccer looked pretty good for its time, and while the underlying formula hasn't changed all that much, the franchise has certainly evolved a lot from the graphic standpoint. Take the latest entry for example. FIFA 23 makes full use of the Frostbite engine, and produces character models that not only look lifelike but also function in a realistic manner with proper momentum for movements and ball physics. God of War to Ragnarok. Sony Santa Monica delivered an excellent adventure with 2005's God of War, which featured boss fights brimming with spectacle, all rendered with some of the best visuals on the market. The developer has continued to pioneer that visual excellence with each new entry, and the latest, God of War Ragnarok, is no different in that regard. Ragnarok features best-in-class visuals, and the many changes in comparison to the original only serve to highlight the evolution of the series and PlayStation's technology over the last couple of generations. Mortal Kombat 1 to Mortal Kombat 1. Mortal Kombat was a revolutionary fighting game in more ways than one. It was one of the very first games to feature extremely violent finishers, which became a major cause of controversy during the 90s. However, seeing those primitive blood splatters doesn't look all that intimidating now. But jump to the upcoming Mortal Kombat 1, and the difference is just night and day. Suffice it to say, Mortal Kombat 1 looks incredibly realistic, with character models having extremely high poly counts and environments that don't look all that different from real life. Technology has evolved a lot in 30 years, and the difference is pretty visible when you compare the Mortal Kombat of 1992 to the Mortal Kombat 1 of 2023. Crash Bandicoot 1 to Crash Bandicoot 4. Crash Bandicoot was one of the earliest mascots for PlayStation, and the original game was a showcase for the graphical prowess of Sony's PS1. Crash Bandicoot wowed gamers with its great use of bright colors, expressive character animations, and varied level geography. And the series has continued to enjoy massive critical and commercial acclaim with each release. Crash Bandicoot 4 has brought the series back into the limelight after a long hiatus, and the visual overhaul looks absolutely amazing. Everything from Crash's updated character model to the background detailing in levels and high-quality assets looks phenomenal, and it feels amazing to control as well. Tekken 1 to Tekken 8. Much like Mortal Kombat before, Tekken has enjoyed a long period of critical and commercial reception. The series has come a long way from the 1994 original, and Tekken 8 is looking poised to take the franchise to new heights from both a graphical and gameplay perspective. As for the graphics side of things, Tekken 8 is leaps and bounds ahead of the original, and that much is to be expected from a release gap of 5 console generations, but still, it's pretty interesting to see the stark changes between the visual makeup of these two releases and trace how a strong foundation of ideas eventually led to this magnum opus. Pokémon Red and Blue 1996 to Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Pokémon is one of the very few series that have managed to retain its mainstream popularity for many decades. But the games themselves have evolved considerably within that time frame. Take for instance Pokémon Red and Blue that was released for the Game Boy in 1996, and pit it against the newly released Pokémon Scarlet and Violet for the Switch. The new releases obviously feature drastic improvements on the visual front, yet they managed to retain a lot of the defining elements that make the series so beloved by fans all across the globe. And with that, we reached the end of the video. Have anything to say? Let us know in the comments below. Also, we upload new videos every single day on GamingBolt, so please consider subscribing as it really helps us out. Thanks for watching.